Hi there, my name's Craig, and I've been a recovering and relapsing audiophile for decades now. In this latest relapse into the hobby, I found out, like many of you have, that EQ can do wonders. You can get that bass level exactly where you want it. It can take out some kind of nasty peak that you may be hearing. It's a phenomenal tool. But how do we actually come up with the settings for the EQ? Well, often we do things like turn to databases. We look on places like squig.link, we go to auto EQ, a whole bunch of places that we can actually go for those. Now, I love these tools and I love these sites. By day, I'm a scientist, and literally nothing gets us more excited than like graphs and data and measurement tools. It's a really, really fantastic thing that we have here. I don't mean to undermine that. But I don't know about you, but a number of the times when I try actually plugging in those curves and listening then to the headphones, I'm not really happy. So did I do them wrong? Well, that's easily checked. Well, no. Do I have a different preference target? Should I search around and figure out whose preference target is closest to mine? Am I things like, am I a JM1, not a Harman? Am I a Critical? I mean, I don't really look like Critical, but maybe I hear like Critical does or something. Okay, maybe there's some of this certainly in there, but there's another big thing going on. And again, as a scientist by day, this is something that we think about a bunch. It's also something that the headphones.com crew has really been paying a lot of attention to and really been trying to make everybody aware of. Folks like Resolve and Listener and Golden Sound and Blaine in particular have been talking a lot about this. Different test rigs and different ears will hear things differently. In fact, as they're doing their reviews right now, the new plots that they actually show this exact thing, how these different test rigs will actually, measure then that headphone. So what they're showing is what we call measurement error. We want this test rig to actually measure the truth with some big capital T here. How does this particular headphone or IEM sound? What's its frequency response? And critically, how is that going to sound to my ears? Now, there are a lot of sources of testing error, measurement error, and people work a lot of these out by multiple placements, knowing when they have a bad seal, all of this kind of stuff. And yes, that's one whole aspect of it. But the fact that these different rigs, even things like this BNK 5128, it's closer to a typical ear, and that's great, but the odds are that you do not hear exactly the way the BNK 5128 hears. My esteemed listening colleague and I, we listen to headphones, we come up with pretty similar reviews. When we listen to IEMs, they can be completely opposite on that. Now, I know all that, you may be saying. Great. But did you really understand just how much it impacts your ability to use those measurements to come up with your EQ? Or to use somebody else's EQ curves? Applying the wrong fix can actually do more harm than good. So, try to make this point for everybody here. Take a look at this. I pulled a semi-random headphone measurement from the headphones.com forum. This happens to be the FIO FT1. I picked this because he and DMS, I believe, had tested the same exact headphone on 3 different rigs. It's not just the same make and model. No, it's the same actual unit. So here are Resolve's published plots for the 3 different rigs, the 5128, the 4128, and the Gross 43. So you can see in here that we do have a lot of places in which things are nice and common, but we also have areas in which they differ. So like right here in the mid-range here, like 150 to 1.5 kilohertz, it's pretty darn good, but they're coming up with differences in the bass. More importantly, perhaps, they're also coming up with differences here, really in this sort of like upper mids and into the treble. Our ears are incredibly sensitive right here. And so what it's saying is that these 3 different test rigs hear that headphone differently. So if we come up with an EQ based on one rig and we apply it to another rig, well, we can get into trouble. So first in all of this here, what I'm going to be showing you is I first need, I'm a scientist by day, I need to replicate Resolve's results. So what I did here is I extracted the data from his figure, not the figure that you're seeing on the left here, but then the actual raw curves that are on, on the review site there. Then after that, I then said, okay, look, I do this. I go into Listener's EQ Playground. I import these. I imply the appropriate compensation. So they have the 5128 diffuse field, the 4128 diffuse field, the Keymar diffuse field, the KB50XX. I don't have his shading on here. I'm a little too lazy to go and generate that. But hopefully what you can see here is that, yes, in fact, I've replicated his data, his plots. Okay, so now at this point here, to really show you this, I'm gonna now just do a couple little transforms and everything on the data. So here's the data, here are all three of them. First thing is, let's go and actually flatten this. Now, it doesn't really matter whether you like this target, whether you don't like the target. The point is gonna stand regardless of whatever target we actually use. So let's flatten that. And also now then, let's just hone in onto a couple of them. So here's the 5128's measurement of this pair of headphones. And what I then said is, all right, now let's have auto EQ go and say from 20 hertz to 12 kilohertz, go and come up with its best filters to flatten that range. Well, okay, what you can see here is that it's done a pretty darn good job. It's actually come up with this. So we can take that green line, how it measures natively, and apply the EQ with a whole bunch of filters, and we get the yellow line. And for those playing along at home, those happen to be the EQ filters. All right, now, again, it's not actually flat because it shouldn't sound flat. Flat here means that it's conforming to that diffuse field tilted target that we were sort of aiming for. Okay, so now at this point, we're going to say, let's go and take this 5128 data and everything here. Now let's overlay how the Gross hears this same exact headphone. Now, again, you may be looking at this and saying, Craig, these look pretty darn similar to my eye. And kudos if you remembered my name at that point. You're a smart cookie. And that's coming from a memory expert who actually does this for a living. Thank your hippocampus for coming up with that. So, but you may be looking at this and saying, hey, look, those are pretty darn similar. They're just a little bit shifted from each other. There's a little bit of a difference over here, a little bit of a difference over there, or something like this. But overall, these are conforming pretty darn well. All right. Now then, let's go and take this and let's EQ that Gross measurement based on the filters that we were coming up with from the 5128s. So if your ear happens to be more like a Gross ear, you have a Grossy ear, this is how it's going to come up. Okay, now at the moment, it's kind of confusing. We've added in, a couple too many lines here. Let's just simplify this. Again, here then is both of them without EQ. And a lot of us would look at this and say, yeah, those are going to be pretty darn similar kinds of things. There's not much measurement error. Now, however, what I've put on here is the EQ applied to the 5128 and also that same exact set of EQ filters applied to the Gross. Because again, the idea is to say, can I generalize and take that measurement from something like the 5128 and use it on my own ears? And if I have Grossy kinds of ears, well, what am I getting now? What we can see is that, yeah, we're down in here. You got a couple dB or so down from 1.5 to 4 kilohertz or so. And we also have this feature right here that's come on this. Now, if we actually go back, we can see that, all right, yeah, we can actually sort of see this in here, but that equalization is then going and helping us really see it. It's not only letting us see it, it's actually amplifying it a bit. Okay, now in truth, you don't actually need to go through the whole song and dance of coming up with the EQ filters and applying them. You can use Squig's ability to go and flatten anything to be able to go and do this. So you can say something like, let me put both of the measurements on here and flatten the 5128's curve, or put both of them on here and flatten the Gross's curve. And what this is then saying is, if you EQ'd according to one of the rigs, but your ear is much more like the other rig, how might it sound to you? This is the measurement error that I'm talking about. They're measuring the same device, but they come up with different readouts. And so applying one onto the other can lead to this kind of problem. Now, I can do it with real data there. I can do it perhaps a lot cleaner or more clearly actually with just some synthetic data here. So we're going to step out of the real world data and we're still just going to use Squig here to make this super apparent. So let's say you've got a great headphone. This thing is perfect. But the one thing that it's got this one issue. It's got a peak at 4 kilohertz. 6 dB, the Q here is 4. We got this peak. All right, you could have that. And you could do something like you could come up with a filter curve, like this little blue line here. You could apply that EQ. Great. We could fix it. Perfect. So far, life is good. There is no measurement error for us to be worrying about. Your estimate of the fix lines up perfectly with the measurement because you're measuring and fixing based on the same reading there. That's good. Let's say instead that the measurements rig geometry puts this peak here at 4 kilohertz, but you get it instead at 5 kilohertz. It's the same peak, it's just shifted by 1 kilohertz. So the rig gives you the purple, but your ear gives you then that yellow line. Now let's play that game of applying then the EQ based off of the measurement, the purple line, applying it now and seeing how would I hear that. Okay, again, this is how I hear the headphone. I apply that and I now get this. You don't hear that purple line, that nice purple thing that you're trying to come up with. That's the one without the measurement error. What you hear then is this dark yellow line. We've now got a dip followed by a peak. Maybe the upper mids now sound grainy. Neither too much or too little, but just not quite right. You pulled out something that wasn't a problem and you left the thing that was a problem there. Why? It was just a relatively modest shift in a narrowband peak between two measurement devices. The one that came up with the estimate of the error and the one that you're actually listening through your ear put that peak in two different places. Because of something like a difference in the length of your ear canal versus the testing rig or the geometry of your concha or something like this, there's a measurement error and those measurements don't now apply to you and you've done more harm than good. Because this you had originally, you left it, and you've introduced this here as well. So hopefully you've learned something here. We have measurement error. It's a thing. The test rigs may be close to you or your buddies may be close to you, but they won't ever be exactly spot on and right. This is why you need to pay attention to how the headphones perform on different rigs if that's ever actually provided. It also hopefully lets you see why some headphones are described as easy to EQ and some aren't. Is it just a simple set of shelf filters or some nice big broad filter or something like this in the mid bass or something like that? Or is it a series of tight peaks in the mid-range and treble that'll likely be more prone to this kind of measurement error? This is also why things like sine sweeps can be so helpful, and sites like Audiophile can really then help you see, are you hearing the kinds of errors that that set of filters is trying to fix? Are you hearing them or not? In the end though, remember that EQ is just a way to let you enjoy your music and everything more here. Play with it. Realize that no set of filters are going to be perfect for your ears, at least no set of filters that somebody else had come up with there, but they may provide some good suggestions or starting points to actually work from. But no matter what, use it to actually let you enjoy your music more.